Hello everyone and welcome back to where we sometimes talk about thrillers on Thursdays. This is just one of my favorite times of year to film because my last video was my favorite and least favorite books that I read in 2024, and today we get to look forward to all the really cool horror and thriller releases that are coming out in 2025. I have 12 here that I'm going to talk about in order of release date in case you want to, bookmark them on Goodreads or on your Libby app. But I love the fact that there's a lot of gothic fiction in this list. I talked about this in my 2024 favorites, but I really want to read some more good gothic horror, especially some kind of gritty, stomach-churning gothic horror, and I think there's going to be actually a lot of that coming out in this year. So, maybe some things I'm not excited about in 2025 in the world, but I am looking forward to this. So let's go ahead and get into the 12 books I'm looking forward to reading in 2025. First, and I'm sure this is the top of a lot of people's horror reading lists, is Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix, and this comes out on January 14th. For each of these, I'll just read a little couple sentence blurb, but for this one, in the summer of 1970, 15-year-old Fern is sent to Wellwood Home in Florida, a strict institution where unwed mothers are hidden to have their babies in secret. And as you can guess from the title, somehow witchcraft becomes involved. I've loved some of Grady Hendrix books. Actually, I would say the majority of the ones that I've read, and there's just one that I was not a fan of, and that was Final Girl Support Group. So I'm hoping that I really, really love this one. This one is already out and the reviews are really, really promising. So I think this is going to be hopefully one of the first books that I read in 2025. Then is We Do Not Part by Han Kang, and this comes out January 21st. This one, even from reading the little blurbs, I'm not positive 100% what it's about, but this author wrote The Vegetarian, which I'm sure many of you, including myself, have read, but I think it blends some pretty terrifying elements with present day as well as Korean history. And from what I can gather, there's a fierce snowstorm and a woman is trying to reach her friend's house to save her beloved bird named Amma. So interesting premise, but this one is definitely also really at the top of my list. Now this next one, I'll admit, isn't one that necessarily reading it really would have grabbed me, but as you go online, I'm sure you do the same thing. I'm reading all of the upcoming horror releases for 2025, and this one is at the top of so many people's lists. I'm not familiar with the author, but it's one of those things where just because I keep seeing it everywhere, I feel the need to read it. And that is At Dark, I Become Loathsome, and this comes out January 28th. For this, our protagonist is Ashley Luton. Tormented by grief over his wife's death and his son's disappearance, he devotes himself to helping others torn between life and death through a particular ritual. One night he connects with Jinx, a troubled man whose dark, unsettling story pulls Ashley into a spiral of painful revelations. Did anyone else watch Arcane? Because Jinx, that's immediately just what it makes me think of. So again, this one I'm just kind of putting on here because everyone else has, I'll be honest. But I will say, if you get to the end of this video, if there are any new horror releases that are coming out that you are excited about that I did not put on this list, please let me know because I would love to know. Now we're going to start to get into some weird ones that I'm really excited about. And this next one is The Lamb by Lucy Rose, and this comes out January 30th. This takes place in northern England, I believe present day, and Margot and her mother live a secluded life near the forest, welcoming strangers whom Mama calls strays into their home. While Mama offers warmth and wine, she ultimately satisfies her dark hunger by consuming their bodies. When a mysterious stranger named Eden arrives during a snowstorm, Margot is forced to confront the dangerous dynamics of her family and her own emerging desires. This is described as kind of a gothic coming-of-age tale, but I was glancing on Goodreads, and this review is what really sold it for me, and the person who posted this review is Caitlin Bramwell, and she said, "This book has permanently changed my brain chemistry and the way I view the world," and just so many 5-star reviews saying this is a bizarre one, but really, really good, so I'm so excited. Then we've got some more gothic fiction, and that is Victorian Psycho by Virginia Feito, apologize if I'm mispronouncing that, and that comes out February 4th. Our protagonist is Winifred Noddy, and she arrives at Ensor House as a Victorian governess, determined to play the part while concealing her dark compulsions. As she uncovers the twisted dynamics of the Pounds family and struggles to suppress her own tendencies, her imagination begins to unravel reality. On Christmas morning, Winifred's chilling nature comes to fruition, darkly witty tale. So some more gothic fiction. I get the impression that something is very, very wrong with Winifred, and I kind of love the idea of a very unhinged protagonist who's thrown also into a very unhinged family household and to see what that kind of explosion looks like. Then we have The Unworthy, which comes out March 4th. And I'm sure a lot of you have read Tender is the Flesh. I read that even though that came out a number of years back, I just read it recently, so very fresh and top of mind for me. But a lot of people are really anticipating this book, but I believe it is the author's first book that they've written since Tender is the Flesh. But this is a thrilling work of literary horror about a woman cloistered in a secretive, violent religious order while the outside world has fallen into chaos. When a stranger breaches the convent's walls, the narrator is forced to confront her buried past and question the truth behind the sacred sisterhood's ideology. This haunting feminist horror explores the climate catastrophe, extremism, and the dark instincts that shape human survival. I had a little bit of mixed thoughts with Tender is the Flesh, but I will say it is one where it has really stuck with me, and so much of the imagery is really burned into my brain. I'm sure for many of you, it's the same for you. So I am really, really intrigued by what the author is going to come out next, and it seems like it's going to handle a lot of very interesting and different themes that you often maybe don't see in horror novels. Then this next one is not horror, but I heard about this one in the New York Times book podcast, and that is The Dream Hotel, and that comes out March 4th. In a near future where dreams are monitored, Sarah is detained at a retention center after an algorithm predicts she will harm her husband. Held with another accused woman, Sarah endures shifting rules and extended captivity until a new arrival disrupts the order and pushes her to confront the corporations controlling their freedom. The Dream Hotel is a chilling exploration of surveillance, privacy, and the limits of technology's power over identity and freedom. And I think especially today, in today's age, when we're seeing really weird things happen where politics are really, say, bleeding themselves into the world of TikTok, I think The Dream Hotel is going to really hit home again. I don't think this is necessarily horror by any means, but I love the New York Times book review podcast, and I heard really, really good things about this one, so I'm very, very excited. Then is The Buffalo Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones, and this comes out March 18th. As I'm filming this, I'm actually about to finish, finally, The Angel of Indian Lake. It's a 17-hour audiobook, so it's just been taking me kind of a month to get through it. But this one sounds very different, and this is about a diary written in 1912 by a Lutheran pastor is discovered within a wall. What is unveiled is a slow massacre, a chain of events that go back to 217 Blackfeet dead in the snow. Told and transcribed interviews, a man shares the narrative of his peculiar life over a series of confessional visits. This is an American Indian revenge story written by one of the new masters of horror. And again, I love me some Jade, but just excited to do something that's also a little bit more historical horror, which I don't tend to read a lot of. Next up is When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy, and this comes out April 22nd. I love Mary. I love Nestlings. Nat Cassidy is just one of my new favorite horror authors, so I'm really excited about this one. But for this one, what it's about, one night Jess, a struggling actress, finds a 5-year-old runaway hiding in the bushes outside her apartment. After a violent, bloody encounter with the boy's father, she and the boy find themselves running for their lives. Again, obviously I read a lot of horror and I read a lot of thrillers, but I don't read a lot where it's someone being chased by someone else, which sounds like such a simple premise. But for those of you who've been following my channel since the beginning, I loved, what was it called? Oh my God, I'm blanking. I'll put it on the screen here. But just the simple premise of someone being chased, you don't actually read that much in horror, so I think it could be a fun one. Next up, we've got some maybe sci-fi or fantasy horror, not sure, but this is The Staircase in the Woods, and this comes out April 29th. This is about 5 high school friends who are bonded by an oath to protect one another. Then on a camping trip in the middle of the forest, they find something, a mysterious staircase to nowhere. One friend walks up and never comes back, and then the staircase disappears, and I believe it jumps forward 20 years later. But just that hook, staircase to nowhere in the forest, immediately I'm in. We just have 2 more, and next is Blood on Her Tongue, and this comes out March 29th. This takes place in 1887 Netherlands. Lucy's twin sister falls ill, displaying strange behavior and obsession with a recently discovered corpse. As Sarah's condition worsens, Lucy races to uncover the truth behind her sister's symptoms, suspecting something far darker than madness is at play. This also is described as gothic horror, and I think that's what the 3rd or 4th one on this list. But just the idea that this one also has kind of foggy bogs that maybe they're running through. I saw that in one of the reviews, and it's just supposed to be really gruesome and gory. And just, you know, the hook, 1887 Netherlands, someone's obsessed with a corpse. And I think it's also, from what I've seen in reviews, dealing with kind of that codependent relationship of twins. Just seems really, really unique. And finally, coming out on April 29th, we have Bat Eater and Other Names for Cora. Actually, I said that wrong. Bat Eater and Other Names for Cora Zeng. But for this, our protagonist is Cora, and she is a crime scene cleaner in Chinatown, and she's haunted by the trauma of witnessing her sister's murder, as well as the eerie presence of hungry ghosts and a serial killer targeting East Asian women. A lot of people, including myself, I think, have mixed thoughts on reading books set during the pandemic, and this one is, but from what I've seen that come up in reviews where people have said, even if you don't like reading about the pandemic, this is kind of an important one to read, because I think a lot of it is going to get at, you know, it's a horror novel, but it's also going to be about the unfortunate horror that the Asian culture had to go through during COVID and the pandemic, and, you know, all the unfortunate racism that came with that. So a really, really, kind of like the last one, a really, really unique and interesting premise for a horror novel. And I think it's going to be a hard one, maybe, to read, but a really interesting one. So those are all the horror novels I'm interested in 2025. It's funny because this is only going up till April, so we'll see what comes out a little bit later in the year. But if there's some of these that you're really excited for me to review, please let me know and I'll kind of move them higher up on my list. And like I said, if there's anything missing from this list that you think I should be reading, please let me know. So that is all I have for you. I'm filming this on January 20th, so this has been a nice little escape from what's happening. But hope you all are doing well and staying safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.